You said a few seconds ago. Anyway, it's okay. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. ISKCON Svandaracharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Shri Shri Panchatattva ki Jai. Sankirtan Yajna ki Jai. ISKCON Newcastle Yatra ki Jai. God Premanande. All glories to their Samadhivatis. All glories to their Samadhivatis. All glories to their Samadhivatis. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Kastyatyadi Chitane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakapacharubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Kaivacha Patitana Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So devotees of the Lord, we're having a special program tonight as Prabhu said. Oh, thank you.
Haribo.
Haribo. You did it very nicely, didn't you? That's what we were Hariboing for. So yes, we're having a special program. And as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, well, we're going to focus on Srila Prabhupada. And, of course, I'm well aware that none of you, I assume, did actually see him in person. That was very nice. But it's okay if you didn't see him in person. Because if you just follow his instructions and serve him, and serve his mission, and serve his devotees, then it's the same. Basically, the effect, it's the same. And he's watching. He's watching. And he's thinking, what is Dharamji doing? It's okay. But he is. He's thinking like that. Yeah, he's thinking, what are you all doing? How's it all going? And he's thinking, how can I inspire you to get more deeply into Krishna consciousness, and in that way get more out of Krishna consciousness? This is Srila Prabhupada. He's with us. And that's how he's thinking. And the thing is, in that regard, the more we can develop a relationship with Srila Prabhupada in our minds, in our hearts, the better it will be for us in Krishna consciousness. Oh yes. The more mercy we'll get, the more progress we'll make, the more happiness we will get, and actually It's completely transformative. So anyway, there are different ways we can cultivate our relationship with Prabhupada. One we just mentioned a few minutes ago is by following his instructions. That's sort of the fundamental, foundational way we can develop our relationship with Srila Prabhupada. But if we hear about him, his activities, his qualities, which were all exhibited in his activities, then that really, really helps a lot. It really helps a lot. It makes Srila Prabhupada like, you could say, like a real person for us, instead of just sort of like an icon of some sort, some important person. But it really makes him into a real person for us, so like we know him, someone we know. Yeah. So, okay, here we go. I'm going to tell you some stories about Srila Prabhupada in which he exhibited different qualities, like I said. First one here is from around 1972, 1973, from around that time. So a little more than 50 years or thereabouts ago. And it was about that time. Well, let me just say first, that Srila Prabhupada, he was given many gifts by devotees and, people who appreciated him, followers, guests. People would give him different things. And particularly things like clothes. Someone gave him once a cowboy shirt and cowboy hat. You know what that meant? The Wild West. Yeah, really. I think there are pictures. I think the shirt had tassels on the shoulders, if you know what I mean. And anyway, it was like a real cowboy hat. And one of these cowboy shirt, and one of these Wild West hats with the big brim, And Prabhupada wore it. There are photos. If you look around, you'll find photos of Prabhupada dressed in this cowboy outfit. I mean, at least from sort of the waist up. So he wore it for a few days, and then he gave it away. And that's what Prabhupada would do. People would give him pens, sometimes they'd give him rings, and give him like a kurta, sometimes a shirt, and a watch. Sometimes they give him a watch, and sometimes, not a cheap watch, like an Omega watch I saw Prabhupada with, if you know what that means. It's not super expensive, but it's definitely not cheap. Yeah. So, that's what he'd do. He'd accept them, because it's for their benefit that he's accepting them, the gifts, because they will get some mercy from Krishna by Prabhupada accepting their gifts. But then he'd give it away a few days later. So one devotee, he was in Switzerland, passing through, and at around that time. And the first quartz watches were just coming out. You know, instead of having the hands that move like that, but with the light, you know, that you can read. It's sort of got like a printout of the time and how many seconds and all that. So this devotee bought one of the first quartz watches and paid a lot of money for it, like a couple of $100. And it was a gold watch or, you know, gold plated or something like that. And he gave it to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada wore it. And when guests and devotees would come in, Srila Prabhupada would pull up his sleeve and show them the watch. Look at this. And it had a button or a couple of buttons on it. And you press a button and it would show the hours, and then you press another button, it shows the seconds. And Prabhupada was showing people like this. It didn't really, yeah, and Prabhupada would say, look, you want to know what time it is? And he'd press the button, and then you could read the time. So this devotee was really happy. Prabhupada wore the watch for like 3 or 4 days. Then he came in a few days after that, and Prabhupada wasn't wearing it. He'd given it to someone, because Prabhupada was really not attached. You probably heard that Prabhupada once in America somewhere, the devotees picked him up in a Rolls Royce from the airport. And there was one lady reporter, I think her name was Sandy Nelson, slightly famous. And she was there. And there's all these devotees. And then suddenly this Rolls Royce appears, which, you know, is basically not a common vehicle and the sort of thing that affluent people use. And Prabhupada was driven away in that. And she didn't like that. She didn't appreciate that. And so she came back. That was at the airport. Then she came back to the temple to interview Prabhupada. And she was kind of, you know, in a cross mood. She was not happy. And she said, oh, I thought you were spiritual. Yeah, but look at you. You're being driven around in a Rolls Royce. It's very materialistic. It's not good. It's not good. And Srila Prabhupada said, yes, you're right. It's not good. They should have, the Rolls Royce is just made of tin. They should have picked me up in a gold car. Yes. Because the representative of God, you should treat like God. And the lady, of course, you know, she was just didn't know what to say. So I don't know what happened to her, but actually, yeah. But Prabhupada, he would sometimes do like that, throw things back at people. People would challenge him, and instead of becoming defensive, you know, like with the Rolls Royce, saying, well, I didn't know, you know, I didn't tell them to get it. They just got it, and in other words, it's not my fault. But Prabhupada just threw it back at the person. Another time, Prabhupada, a reporter again, the reporter said to Srila Prabhupada that I have heard that you say that God instructs you personally. Prabhupada said, yes. And the man said, but how can God speak to you And Prabhupada said, yes, he speaks to me. How can God speak to a human being? Now, what is this? And there was one devotee there, actually it was Radheshwar Prabhu, who we actually had a meeting with earlier today. And you could see that this man, the reporter, was just, he couldn't sort of digest it. So he thought, Radheshwar thought, I'd better step in and clarify. So he just interrupted Prabhupada. You know what they're saying? Don't speak while I'm interrupting. So he just interrupted Prabhupada and told them that, it's not exactly that God speaks to him, but the thing is that he knows all the instructions that Krishna has given in Bhagavad Gita. And therefore, and Prabhupada had said that the man had said, how do you choose your leaders? And Prabhupada said, Krishna tells me. So anyway, Radheshwar interrupted and said, it's not that Krishna really tells him who to choose. Vasushrestha and company and everyone and all who can become the leaders. But the thing is, Prabhupada knows Bhagavad Gita. And in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells us what are the qualities of a leader. So when Prabhupada sees that there's someone, and he's got the qualities that Krishna speaks of a leader, then he knows, I can make him a leader. What do you think of that? Pretty clever? Not really. Anyway, but then Prabhupada interrupted him. And Prabhupada said, no, stop talking nonsense. Krishna tells me. These types of things Prabhupada would do sometimes. And just sort of, blow people out of the water. Yeah. Here's an interesting one. Listen to this. Prabhupada was in Mexico, traveling around some towns, cities in Mexico, doing preaching programs. So one time, during the day, they're in some town, and some person, like a friend of the devotees, who lived in that particular town or city, just somewhere nearby, he offered to Prabhupada, if you'd like to have a rest for a while, come to my place. Got a very nice place. It's not far. And you can take a break and relax a bit. And later on you go to the program. So Prabhupada agreed. And he went to the person's place and lay down for a while. Then, after about an hour, Prabhupada had a bell. Prabhupada often would keep a bell, so he wouldn't have to shout, Jai Krishna, where are you? That sort of thing. You just ring the bell, and the servant would come. The assistant would come. So after about an hour, Prabhupada rang the bell, and Shamsundar was serving him. So Shamsundar came in. There was Srila Prabhupada sitting on the end of the bed. And he pointed over the head of the bed, on the wall, sort of suspended from the wall, was a picture, or not a picture, but a crucifix. You know what I mean? Like a sort of statue type of thing, suspended from the wall, and it's Christ on the cross. And, you know, he looks really like he's really not happy, Christ. And Srila Prabhupada, Shamsud said there were tears coming from Prabhupada's eyes, at least a couple of tears coming. And Prabhupada said, Shamsunda, can you please remove this? And Prabhupada said, they have killed their spiritual master so they can sin. So Shamsunda took away the crucifix. Понимаете? Почему? Huh? Do you understand? You understand what a crucifix is, right? Christ on the cross, on the wall, hanging. Yeah, so Prabhupada said, please remove it. They've killed their spiritual master so they can sin. Later on, I'll tell you a joke that Prabhupada told. You know the joke, yeah, you know the joke. She knows the joke. Anyway, you know what a Surabi cow is? It's a special cow from the kingdom of God. And they're just like, what? Like super cows. They just give any amount of milk. Sometimes, if you want, they will give you milk them. They'll give mango juice. Yeah. Sometimes they may give Sprite. Whatever you want. Whatever you want. If you just want water, they'll give water. But if you want some super nectar drink, they'll give you that. Those are Surabi cows, yeah. So, Tamal Krishna Maharaj once spoke to Prabhupada and said that you said once that you're like a cow, and wherever the devotees take you, then you'll go there and give milk, meaning give some nectar about Krishna. And Tamal Krishna said, but the thing is with you, that with a normal cow, you can milk it, and you'll get so many liters, however many. If it's a really good cow, you might get 20 liters of milk. But then it comes to the end and that's it. Then you've got to wait, either to the next morning or at least till the evening. So, but Prabhupada, you're not like that. You just keep on giving the nectar. And Srila Prabhupada said, yes, that's because I am a Surabi cow. One devotee asked Prabhupada that, he said, Srila Prabhupada, Krishna is transcendental to the laws of material nature. So, why do the garlands we make for the deities, why do they deteriorate? Because they're Krishna's garlands, and they should just stay nice. I think this one will stay for a long time. It's just special. Anyway. So why Prabhupada? Why do the garlands that we offer to the deities deteriorate? And then they have to be replaced. And Srila Prabhupada said, just to give you the chance to serve by making new garlands. That's what it's for. Yeah. So, let's see. Right. So, somewhere in America, devotees chanting japa, just sort of like in the prasadam area, just like in the foyer out there. Prabhupada comes down, and there's devotee chanting japa. And Prabhupada saw, as I'm sure never happens in ISKCON Newcastle, or ISKCON Sunderland for that matter, the sink in the prasadam room was full of, these stainless steel plates, which were not clean. They hadn't been washed. So they had prasadam left all over them. And Prabhupada asked the devotee, is someone going to wash them? And the devotee didn't answer. He didn't know what to say. And Prabhupada said, all right, then I will do it. And Prabhupada started washing the plates. And then the devotee had to intervene, take over, and wash the plates. But Prabhupada, he didn't like uncleanliness, dirtiness. Really didn't like it at all. In fact, Prabhupada would say that if in a room, in one room, there is dirt and there is a Brahmin, either the dirt will go or the Brahmin will go. And if neither of them goes, but actually, in other words, they coexist together, then it means the Brahmin is no longer a Brahmin. Yes. One devotee, this is interesting, devotee I know from England, Ravi. I don't know if you know Ravi, he's British. So anyway, Ravi, he was uninitiated. He was Baptist Steve. And he was a motor mechanic. And they had brought some vehicles from Germany, some buses from Germany to India. They drove them overland. Not a good idea nowadays, or any time really. So, and he was fixing them and driving them, and he was not initiated. And when they arrived in Mayapur, and the leader of the party, his name was Hansaduta, he said to Ravi, or he was Baptist Steve, he said, would you like to be initiated? Would you like to be initiated? And Baptist Steve said, yeah, that would be nice. Actually, he'd been thinking about it for some time. He'd been meditating on Srila Prabhupada. So anyway, off they went to do something. And then Hansaduta came and spoke to Baptist Steve and said, Prabhupada wants to see you. So in he went. First time to be in Prabhupada's presence. And Prabhupada's presence, he had a very impactful presence. He really did. So, he's coming in and he's thinking, gosh, what's Prabhupada going to do? Is he going to chastise me? Or have I made some mistake? What's going on now? He walked in. He just walked in. And he's standing because he just walked in. he's standing there, and Prabhupada sitting. And Prabhupada said, "Your name is Ravi Das." He said, "No, he's Ravi Das," but he's still standing there. And he just walked in. And Hansadutta said, "I think you should offer obeisances, Prabhu." So he offered obeisances. And then he sat there. And Ravi said to Prabhupada, "Is that it? Is that all?" And Prabhupada said, "What more do you want?" Yeah. So, and Prabhupada, he said to Prabhupada, "But Prabhupada, I've seen other devotees get initiated, and they have a fire yajna." And Prabhupada said, "That's just a formality." Prabhupada pointed to his heart. Initiation takes place here in the heart. Yes, and then he realized he'd already accepted Prabhupada within his heart. And so he came out and he was very happy. Okay. Some devotees were with Prabhupada on a morning walk, and one devotee asked Prabhupada, "Srila Prabhupada, is there fog in the spiritual world? Is there fog?" And then they had a whole lot of questions like that. Is there dew on the grass in the spiritual world? And various things like that. And Srila Prabhupada got a little, he wasn't so happy. And he said, "You have so many questions. Just go there and find out." Okay, this is one for the ladies. Ladies, how do you go? Some devotee ladies, Yamuna, you know Yamuna, you've heard of Yamuna. Famous devotee, famous cook, super expert, gee. And another devotee, Haribol. Oh, thank you, yes, Haribol. So they're cooking. Papa, it's for me. They're frying samosas. And this other lady, her name was Harsharani, said, How many samosas can you eat, Srila Prabhupada? Prabhupada said, "More than you can prepare." Then Prabhupada picked up one and started eating a samosa. And Harsharani said, "Prabhupada, you can't taste it, you can't eat it, it's not offered." Yeah. You can't eat while we're preparing the prasadam. Prabhupada said, Who has given you that rule?" And she said, "You have, Srila Prabhupada." And Prabhupada said, "Then I can break the rule." And one other thing. One other thing for ladies. Ladies, Haribol. Ladies, Malati Devi Dasi. Did she ever come here?
No.
Okay. You must invite people. You don't know who's going to just show up sometime. So she was cooking for Prabhupada in Delhi. They were having a big festival in one of the, like in Connaught Place, whatever it's called, in the centre there. And, like 20,000 people every night for a week or so, and she was cooking every day for Prabhupada. And where she was cooking, there was no sink, and there was nothing actually. There was just 4 walls, a ceiling and a floor, and a tap, and a cooker which was on the floor. And she had to cut vegetables when they're more or less on the floor. And because she had to run the water, there was always a couple of inches of water covering the entire floor. And so her sari would get wet every time. And you know, a nice sari, cotton sari, just absorbs the water like a sponge, just sucks it up. So it was wet up to her knees. And she would go out every day and buy vegetables for Prabhupada. One day she was out and she saw in the market somewhere, there was some, do you know what is gagra? Gagra. Right. Very colourful Rajasthani skirt, you know, just around the waist. And it doesn't really go right down, so it comes down a bit. And she thought, this is good, I can wear this. And it will not go into the water. And, you know, very colourful, some mirrors. She bought one, and now she's cooking for Prabhupada. And she thought, what will Prabhupada say? Then she thought, well, it doesn't really matter because he never comes in to the kitchen. About 5 minutes later, take a guess what happened. Prabhupada walked to him and he looked at her. Gagra. Is that correct? How to pronounce it?
Yeah, that's right.
Gagra. Gagra. Like Rajasthani. And he looked at it and he said, what is this? And just walked out. And she quickly put on the sari, which then absorbed all the water and Haribol. Another time, Malating, Devi Dasi, she's a great soul. She's a really great devotee. We also met with her today, actually. And so, in Mayapur at that time, there was basically nothing. There was just the one building down by the gate where now the deities of Nitai Padakamala are. It's just a small building with a thatched roof. And she was cooking for Prabhupada. Then one day, Prabhupada said that tomorrow some of my godbrothers are coming. They're like elderly sannyasis, very conservative, you know, sort of very rigid. The sort of people, when George Harrison donated Bhaktivedanta Manor, 1973, and the word spread around that he's donated Bhaktivedanta Manor, Prabhupada was in Mayapur, and that day he was going to meet Sridhar Maharaj, one of his godbrothers. And one of the devotees who was there said, I think we should take baby out. She'd do better out there. Yeah. That's the way. See you later. Haribol. Haribol. Okay. Prasadam time. So they're coming. you must cook and serve. She would cook and she would serve Prabhupada. But she thought, no, I can't do that. These elderly, very conservative sannyasis, it'll be too embarrassing. So there's like maximum 10 devotees there. So she asked around, could you cook tomorrow? No, busy. Could you? No, busy. Rajendra, no, Prabhu, could you? No, too busy. Well, look, could you at least serve prasadam? Because these sannyasis are coming. Could you do that? No, too busy. Could you? No, too busy. Could you? Raj? No, you couldn't because you're too busy. You're too busy. So she had to do it, the whole thing. So they came, there's like 3 or 4 of them, and she was serving the prasadam. But with her sari, she pulled her sari over her head, not just on top of her head, you know what I mean, but over, down like, so it completely covers the whole head, totally. And she's serving, trying to be as inconspicuous as possible. So in the middle of all that, she's serving the sannyasis something with the sari right over, so she could just vaguely see what was going on. Then Prabhupada, in a loud voice, Prabhupada said, "This is Malati Devi Dasi. She is one of my disciples. She would cut her throat for me, and I would cut my throat for her." And she realized Prabhupada's completely transcendental. He doesn't care, she's a female. She's a disciple, and she's a very sincere disciple, that was all. So, one time, let's just see. Right. Oh, yes. Prabhupada it was 1976, and Prabhupada went, and a whole busload of devotees went to a place north of Mayapur, which is connected with Haridas Thakur, which was being donated to ISKCON. So Prabhupada went there to meet the people and, like that, and have a program. So devotees went in a bus, Prabhupada went in a car, and the car, the driver, it's particularly Bengal, it's the worst. The driver was just permanently on the horn, hoot, hoot. There's nobody on the road for a couple of 100 meters, hoot, hoot. And so then what happened? The hooter broke, and it wouldn't work any longer. So what to do? The driver's driving along. He almost ran over a couple of people. And Prabhupada said to the devotees, "Give me my plate." Means, big stainless steel plate for prasadam. So they gave him his plate. Then he took his walking stick, leant out the window, and was banging the plate. Bang, bang, bang. After a while, he gave it to one of the disciples and had him do it. But Prabhupada said, So Prabhupada said, now you do it. And Prabhupada laughed and said, they will think it is a new American invention and they'll want to imitate it. Right. One time, 1973, Prabhupada was being massaged in Mayapur, and a few devotees were there. And Prabhupada looked at the devotees and said, when I was young, I was very strong. And he went like this. You know? I was very strong. I ate halava every day. And then he went, but now, flat tire. And then he said, everyone laughed, but Prabhupada looked at them seriously and said, don't think it will not happen to you. Right. Let's see. Okay. All right. So, one time, Prabhupada was doing a public program somewhere in India. And he had some of the devotees speak a few words. And a couple of them, quoted Sanskrit verses. Yeah. You know, of course, it's accented Americans. So, one of them, yes, one man there, one sadhu, you know, saffron dress and looking kind of sadhu-ish. He spoke up and he criticized the ladies that you cannot pronounce Sanskrit properly. It is not good, you know, like a little aggressive. And Prabhupada said, these girls will have more devotion than you will ever know in a million lifetimes. Hare Krishna. Yeah. Here's another one. Giriraj Maharaj was in Bombay, Mumbai, and he was temple president. And he was really busy, just all day from morning till night. He was running around doing this and organizing that and going out and buying something and fixing another thing. And it was just non-stop. And he was in anxiety because he wanted to read Prabhupada's books. He really wanted to. But as soon as he would pick up a book, someone would come running along. Giriraj, where are you? You got to come here. You got to go there. And he had to put the book down, so it's just not getting any chance. So then he went to ask Prabhupada, what should I do? But before he could say anything, Prabhupada just started talking and said, if you serve the person Bhagavat, all the truths of the book Bhagavat will be revealed to you, even if you don't read the book. Doesn't mean you must not read the books. Okay, Garuji. Yes, right. Just spontaneously denies Prabhupada. Yes. Krishna's arrangement. Then let's see. Oh yes, this is very nice. Prabhupada, like 1966, maybe 1967, but right at that time, right at the beginning in New York. Prabhupada had given a Bhagavad Gita class, and he asked for questions, and one lady put her hand up, and she asked, she said that in Bhagavad Gita, it said that if you think of Krishna at the time of death, you'll go to Krishna. So my question is, what if I think of you, Prabhupada? What if I think of you at the time of death? Will it have the same effect? And Srila Prabhupada closed his eyes for a couple of seconds, 2 or 3 seconds, didn't say anything. And then he smiled, and Prabhupada said, that was very nice. Yes, it will have the same effect. Yeah. Very well. Right. Okay, devotees. How are you doing? Are you okay? Are you feeling sleepy? Well, that's good. I was going to tell you a joke to wake you up. A joke which Prabhupada told. Are you ready for a joke? Fasten your seatbelts. You're all sitting down. That's good. Because this is quite a joke. Actually, it's kind of X-rated, if you know what I mean. Yeah. But Prabhupada told it. So this one devotee in a temple somewhere, late at night, he had big feasts. Maybe it was the Newcastle temple. Late at night, big feast. Sounds familiar. So he had a really big feast. And it's late, it's like 9 or 10 at night. And last thing he ate was one big, golden brown, juicy, effulgent, just, like, succulent samosa. And he had it. Last thing. And we finished it, and he was finished. That was it, finished. He just went and just collapsed for the night. Next morning he woke up, stood up, and suddenly what? Oh, got to run to the toilet. And he ran to the toilet. And at the toilet, devotees, he passed stool. And he stood up, turned around, looked at the stool in the toilet, and said, look at you, you're so horrible. Ah, and he smells so bad. Ah, you're horrible. And the stool replied, and the stool said, don't talk about me like that. Don't you talk about me like that. Last night, I was that samosa. But after just one night's association with you, see what happened to me. Excuse me. I'm sorry. But Prabhupada told that story. There's a few stories from Bhakti Churu Maharaj. One interesting thing is it's not a story actually, but it's just something very interesting. And Bhakti Churu Maharaj told me this himself, that he was with Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada suddenly just asked, what is Krishna consciousness? What is it? And then Prabhupada answered, Krishna consciousness means developing your eternal relationship with Krishna, disguised as a process. It's actually the development, in other words, it's the development of a personal relationship. That's what it is, in essence, like on the level of the heart. But it's disguised as a process. You must do this, you must not do that, and like that. So, one day, Srila Prabhupada, actually it was during Prabhupada's last, just before he came to the West for the last time, he was in Rishikesh. And one day he asked Bhakti Charu Maharaj, can you get me some orange juice? And Bhakti Charu Maharaj, of course, said, yes, of course. But he couldn't. They didn't have oranges. Someone would have to go out and then get oranges, make the juice. But he couldn't go out because he was looking after Prabhupada, just full time. So he asked one devotee, Prabhupada wants orange juice. Could you go out, buy some oranges, bring them back, and juice them, and we'll give them to Prabhupada? So the devotee said, sure. Devotee came back about 1 hour later, and Bhakti Charu Maharaj said, you got the oranges? Oh no, I forgot. So he asked another devotee, could you just run out and get some oranges? You're going to make oranges for Prabhupada. The devotee said, sure, I'm going to go out and buy a few things. I'll be back in a few minutes. He was back in 1 hour. And Bhakti Charu Maharaj asked him, said, you got the oranges? Oh, sorry, forgot about the oranges. And now, Prabhupada was asking, like every 10 minutes, where is the orange juice? And Bhakti Charu Maharaj was saying, it's just coming, Prabhupada, just a few minutes. So Maharaj said, it was like a comedy of errors. And finally, like 3 hours later, Prabhupada got his orange juice. And Prabhupada looked at it and just pushed it away. He wouldn't accept it. Because he'd been kept waiting like that. And he chastised Bhakti Charu Maharaj. I told you 3 hours ago to get me orange juice, it takes 5 minutes, and now 3 hours later I get the juice. What is this? And he chastised Bhakti Charu Maharaj. The next day, Prabhupada called Bhakti Charu Maharaj into his room, and he said, you serve me so nicely, and all I do is chastise you. Prabhupada said, when a man gets old, he becomes angry easily. So please forgive me for getting so angry with you. And Bhakti Charu Maharaj started crying and he said, Srila Prabhupada, I don't mind at all if you chastise me. You can chastise me as much as you like. But please don't ever speak to me like this again. Apologizing. Don't ever speak to me like this again. I imagine. It's the most time. Yeah, okay. You understand? Yeah, right. Prabhupada, with Bhakti Charu Maharaj, it's in 77, just before they went to Rishikesh, and they're somewhere, I don't know where, but somewhere in UP or somewhere around. And Prabhupada, he was quite healthy, quite fit. And he said to Bhakti Maharaj, I want to show you how to make a special preparation. And he said, it is called Alu Chachari. Mama, hey. Yeah, hey. Chachari. You know what chachari is? It means you cook the vegetables, in this case potato. You cook it at very high heat, so it starts to stick, but not burn yet. But then you turn it over before it burns, so it becomes sort of toasty, but not burnt. And then you let it. I see. Okay. Haribo, Haridas, Haribo. Okay. Sorry. Come back at prasadam time. Yeah, so, and you keep turning it and letting it almost burn and then turning it. And let it almost burn with lots of chili, red chili, whole red chilies, not green chilies, whole red chilies. And for like one person, you may use 10 red chilies and about this much ghee. Really, it's really just full of ghee. And he Prabhupada showed him how to do it. And then Prabhupada had some and was very happy. Then, a few weeks later now, Prabhupada is sick. He's got a bad cold. And he says to Bhakti Maharaj, make me some of that aloo chachari. So, okay, Bhakti Maharaj goes to do it. But now he's thinking, Prabhupada, he's got a cold, he's coughing, mucus, and I must reduce the amount of chili. It won't be good for him, too much chili. So, same amount of ghee, but less chili. So anyway, he did it and served it to Prabhupada. Prabhupada took one mouthful and practically spat it out. Said, what is this? I told you how to cook this. Where's the chili? Where's the chili? There's only like one chili. There's meant to be 10. Where's the chili? I told you what to do. Why didn't you do it? Why not? What's wrong with you? Oh, he really chastised him. Then for about 3 days, whenever a guest would come into the room, Prabhupada would point to Bhakti Maharaj and say to the guest, you know what he did? You know what he did? So it's like 10 or 20 people a day. Yeah, and Prabhupada told him, you've got to use the chili to counteract the ghee. Otherwise, it'll make you more sick. So yeah, everyone who came in, Prabhupada would say, you know what he did? You know what he did? And he would explain the story in front of Bhakti Maharaj. Then, eventually, Bhakti Maharaj said, Srila Prabhupada, I'm so sorry, but I could see you're very sick, and I thought the chili won't be good for you. That's why I reduced it. So then Prabhupada apologized to him, and again said, I'm old, and us old people, we're irritable. Yeah, so might be true in marriage. One day there's this one devotee, his name is Tejas. He's a really nice devotee, American. He's living in India for many years, he's still there. So Prabhupada was staying in Delhi, and Tejas was the temple president of the Delhi temple. And the Delhi temple at that time was a flat, like a 2 or 3 bedroom flat in Delhi, just small. That was ISKCON Delhi. And Prabhupada would stay there with just, like a couple of devotees, and then there was the temple room. It was just a small room with the deities, Radha Parthasarati. So one day Prabhupada's cook was sick, and Prabhupada asked Tejas, "Can you cook upma?" Malam hai, upma. Ah, you know upma? You know upma? Don't know. All right, it's all right. We'll teach you sometime. It's about one of the easiest things to do. So Prabhupada asked him, "Can you make upma?" And Tejas said, "Somewhat, Srila Prabhupada." And Prabhupada said, "Please make it for my lunch, just upma." So around the corner, like a couple of 100 meters away, there was a super califragilistic expialidocious, something like that. 7-star, forget 5-star, 7-star, pure Shuddh Shakahari, pure vegetarian, no onions, no garlic restaurant. Right. So he went around, Tejas went and he sort of ran around and met with the head cook and said, "You got a recipe for upma, like really good upma." And the man gave him this recipe, just what? Like totally overdone, excessive upma. So he made this upma. And it was he used so much ghee, the recipe said. You've got to use that amount of ghee. So much ghee. On top of the upma was a layer of ghee, like at least 1 inch thick. And it's full of all these different spices, just like super exotic. So now Prabhupada, when he would have lunch, generally he would just have a little, he wouldn't eat much. And he'd never have seconds. And then he'd just leave it, and the servant could take away and have the remnants. So this time it's just upma, super duper upma, 7-star. And Prabhupada ate and ate and ate and finished all the upma on his plate. It's just unheard of. Then he said, "Is there any more?" And Tejas said, "Yes, Prabhupada." He went and got another, full plate of upma and gave it to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada ate it and ate it and ate it and finished the whole second plate. It was just beyond unheard of. And Prabhupada said, "Is there any more?" So Tejas brought him the rest. All there was, a third full plate of upma. And Prabhupada ate it all, the whole thing. Next day, Prabhupada didn't get up early. Normally he gets up early, and translates like 2 in the morning. And translates, but he didn't get up. He only got up like about 4:30 or something like that. Very unusual for Prabhupada. And then got up, took a bath, dressed, and then he went out for his morning walk. And a few devotees went, senior devotees, and Tejas, he's the temple president, he went out on the morning walk. And now Prabhupada is walking slowly. Normally he'd walk fast, A young man, you'd have to really walk to keep up with him. So, Prabhupada, now today, Prabhupada is walking slowly. Then after a few minutes, 10 minutes or something walking, Prabhupada stopped and turned to the devotees and said, that devotee who cooked the upma for me yesterday, he tried to kill me. They're just in shock, and they're looking at Tejas. What are you? And Prabhupada said, yes, the upma was so nice, I ate too much, and now my stomach is upset. Hare Krishna. Okay. Right. Here's another story. Well, seeing we're talking about prasadam. Yes. Well, here's a good one. Srila Prabhupada was talking about the temple officers, like the management. And Prabhupada said, the treasurer should be a little thin, and the cook should be a little fat. Then Prabhupada one time in Los Angeles, after the Sunday feast, he's in the temple room, quite a big temple room, and some people wanted to speak to him. Everybody else went out and they're serving the feast, just out the front door on the grass in front of the temple. And then Prabhupada, after like 10 or 15 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, Prabhupada came out and saw, there's these dozens, maybe 100 or maybe more, devotees and friends sitting there on the grass, taking prasadam, talking together, and laughing and sharing together in Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada said, if it were not for prasadam, I don't think I would have a single disciple. Yeah. Okay. Let's find another one. Okay, here's a good one. Some of you, I'm sure some of you know some of these stories, or maybe all of them. But don't worry, it's okay. Prabhupada, one man came to see Prabhupada in Bombay. The man was a meat-eating fanatic. He felt everyone must eat meat, particularly in India. So he's trying to preach to Prabhupada. And, you'd accept Prabhupada would just tell him to go away, but Prabhupada sort of speaking to him a bit. And the man said, yeah, just see, look, all our Indian people, all our Indian men, they're so skinny. He's obviously not into the Hare Krishna temple. Anyway, he said that. All our Indian men, they're so skinny and weak. It's because they're not eating meat. They should all eat meat. Then they'll become big and strong. In the room with Srila Prabhupada was Brahmananda, the late Brahmananda. You may have seen him or known about him or something. So Brahmananda was big. Did you ever meet Brahmananda? He had been New York State heavyweight wrestling champion. He was big and, really heavily built. So this was fancy. Yeah, all our Indian men, they're all skinny, they're all weak, because they're vegetarian. They must eat meat. Prabhupada pointed to Brahmananda, and Prabhupada said, you see this man, he is vegetarian. He can kill you with one hand. That was the end of that. The man lived. Yes. So, okay, here's an interesting one. Prabhupada, there's this one devotee, brahmachari, his name was Sridhar. He unfortunately passed away maybe 10 years ago or something. He was such a nice devotee. He bought me my first computer, 1992. We were very good friends. So he wanted to take sannyas. He's a brahmachari, never married. He wants to take sannyas. So he approaches Prabhupada. Will you give me sannyas? And Srila Prabhupada said, are you 100% sure you will not fall down? Sridhar Prabhu said, no, Srila Prabhupada, I'm not. Prabhupada said, are you 75% sure you will not fall down? Sridhar Prabhu said, no, Srila Prabhupada, I'm not. Prabhupada said, are you 50% sure you will not fall down? And Sridhar said, yes, I think 50% is okay. 50% sure. Prabhupada said, all right, you can take sannyas. Yes. Okay, here we go. It's the management. Anyway, we just carry on. So one time, Prabhupada was giving class in Bhaktivedanta Manor. And during the class he said, speaking to the devotees, the difference between you and me is that you can fall down at any time, but I cannot fall down. Yeah. So after the class, then Prabhupada was in front of the deities in the manor, and he was praying to Radha Gokulananda. In those days, there was no Sita Rama Lakshmana. This was Radha Gokulananda. He's standing there praying. And one devotee, when he went up to his rooms, one devotee asked Prabhupada, said, Prabhupada, what were you praying? And Prabhupada said, I was praying that I will never fall down. And the devotee said, but Prabhupada, you just said in the class that you'll never fall down. And Prabhupada said, yes, that's because I'm always praying to never fall down. So therefore, I can never fall down. One devotee, this is in Berry Place in London, Prabhupada, there's two stories, actually. In Berry Place, Prabhupada gave class, he went up to his rooms, and when he was up in his room, he got a tape of the recording of the class he'd just given, and he put it on the tape player, and he's listening like he's absorbed in listening. And one devotee, there are a couple of devotees there, one of them said, Srila Prabhupada, why are you listening to a recording of the class you gave? And Srila Prabhupada answered, because it was not me speaking, it was Krishna speaking. So therefore, I can listen, and I learn when I listen. Then there's another story here. Tamal Krishna Goswami and some other sannyasi, they're there in class, Prabhupada's giving class, and Prabhupada asks, please quote a verse. What verse shall we quote? Bhagavad Gita 7:14. Quote it. Ramaji. This is Shakespeare, Prabhu. 7:14. Daiviyesha Gunamai Mamamaya Durachiya. But anyway, the point was, quote the verse. And there's Tamal Krishna Goswami and one other sannyasi, and they look at each other like, you say the verse. But neither of them knew the verse. And there in front of everyone, Prabhupada said, just see, you're not reading my books. Every day you have to read and study and learn my books, just like a lawyer learns the law books. You have to know everything, chapter and verse. If you don't know, how will you preach? Unless you know my books, how will you teach the other devotees? And Prabhupada said, do you know that every day I read my own books? Because even I learn something new when I read my books. Because these are not my books. I do not write these books. And then it seemed like something mystical came over Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, every morning when I sit there to write my books, Krishna comes personally and dictates to me. Yes, what to write. I simply take dictation from Krishna to write these books. Therefore, when I read them, even I learn something. Yes. And the way he said it was so dramatic that the devotee who was there said that, afterwards, when he told us the story, I am speaking with a person who is speaking with God, who's right next to God. I'm only one person removed from God. Yes. One time Prabhupada was in Berry Place and he gave class. I don't think any of you went to Berry Place. I doubt it. Okay. So there, the temple room was sort of smaller than this actually, about half the width, very narrow. And Prabhupada's Vyasa stand was on, what was it, that side of the altar, and just like practically touching the altar. And if Prabhupada had wanted, he could lean over and touch the deities. So Prabhupada, he finished the class, and then he stopped. Normally he'd just get up and go out, but he stopped, he's sitting there, and he turned, he's looking at Radha Ishwara, and just looking at them for about 2 or 3 minutes. And then he turned to the devotees, very emotional, moved. And Prabhupada said, I have captured Krishna, and I'm holding him here for you. Please, come and take him. Very well. Okay. Some devotees in Los Angeles, they baked a cake for Prabhupada. And on the cake was a marzipan. You know what is marzipan? Sweet almond, sweetened almond. They made a cow. And Prabhupada looked and said, so now you want me to eat cow? So we should remember that. We shouldn't make cakes or things, with decorations of living entities. Yeah. Okay. Prabhupada, one time in San Diego, the temple president came and met with Prabhupada and said, Srila Prabhupada, one of our friends, Indian businessman, he has imported a whole lot of peanut oil, and he'll let us have it really cheap, and we'll save a lot of money. Is that okay? Prabhupada said, peanut oil is not so first class. And the president said, but Prabhupada, we'll save so much money. We can use it for preaching. Prabhupada said, peanut oil is not so first class. And the president said, we'll save so much money, we can give it to the book fund for printing books. And Prabhupada, pardon the French, Prabhupada said, do whatever damn thing you want. So, okay, you can tell Prabhupada's not happy. And so he goes out, he's going out, and Prabhupada stops him. Prabhupada says, I knew one man, one night, he ate many, many pakoras fried in peanut oil. Temple president said, what happened to him, Prabhupada? Prabhupada said, the next morning he died. So there was no more talk about peanut oil. One time Prabhupada arrived at that same temple. Oh, when should we go on till? Now?
We can go on a little longer, then we'll have some Q&A.
Okay. So, yeah, San Diego temple again. And Prabhupada's coming. And you don't have experience. You don't have experience. What it was like when Prabhupada arrived at a temple. Normally what they do, everything would be repainted. Everything. All the flooring would be changed. Everything. All the curtains would be changed when Prabhupada was coming. And, I mean, maybe not quite that dramatic, but they would repaint. They would definitely paint everything. And sometimes change curtains and different things. So, and normally, the normal thing was they would finish just when Prabhupada's car pulled up at the front door of the temple. Oh yeah, really? Oh gosh. I remember Prabhupada was coming to Berry Place, and I was there. And the devotees gave me some frankincense. You know what is frankincense? It's like, what would you say? It's not like agabati, but it's solid, like little sort of almost rocks. And you put them on a heated thing and they start smoking. So they gave me like about half a ton, or maybe a bit less. But anyway, a lot of frankincense. I'm in Prabhupada's front room. They said, burn it. Yes, make nice atmosphere when Prabhupada comes. So I burnt it. And I tell you what, that room, you couldn't see your hand. It was smoked out. Phew. And then Prabhupada's car pulled up, and the workers came, and they saw the smoke. And they said, "No, what did you do?" I just did what you told me. Open the windows! Open the windows! So I had to open all the windows and let the smoke out. Oh dear. One time in London, in 72, Prabhupada was arriving. And of course, the devotees from where he had flown, they had given the flight information, the flight number, airline, time of arrival, and whatnot. So, okay, the devotees all ready. The flight's coming in sometime in the middle of the afternoon, or even late afternoon. But one devotee is in. He was a devotee who was selling incense to shops in the airport. So he was there just selling the incense which we used to make. Did any of you ever have that? I tell you what, it was without a doubt the worst incense in the world. At least it was really not good, honestly. It came from Hong Kong, unscented, and it was horse dung on little bamboo strips. Horse dung, no kidding. And we dip it into these perfumed oils. Didn't really work very well. So anyway, and he had come to the airport in the incense van, which smelt like there are at least 10,000 sticks of incense in it. It just reeked, just overpowering smell of cheap incense. So there it is, he's moving around the airport. It's not even got a dhoti and kurta on. And suddenly he turns around, there's Prabhupada. It's in the morning. It's like 9 o'clock or something. And there's Prabhupada in the airport. The information they'd been given of the flight arrival was wrong. Now Prabhupada has arrived. So this devotee, his assistant is getting, Prabhupada's assistant's getting the luggage. Prabhupada's just there on his own. And this devotee, he had to start a one-man kirtan in the airport. So they're sort of making their way out of Heathrow, the buildings, it's big. And then he thought, I must call the temple. Now devotees, you may be very surprised to hear that. In those days, 1972, there were no cell phones. Can you believe it? There was life before cell phones. So what he did, he wanted to tell the devotees that, Prabhupada's coming, get ready. So he just ducked into a public telephone box, grabbed the phone, called the temple, Prabhupada's coming! The voice on the other end said, we know he's coming! Bang. Then he had to just run off to find Prabhupada, who's just walking out. So they came in this old Ford Transit van, if you know what that's like, smelling like super cheap incense, like a ton of it. And they arrived at the temple, and there's all the devotees. What happened? Prabhupada's here. Yeah, that sort of thing happened occasionally. One time, in, San Diego, Prabhupada was coming. And so what did they do? Tell me. They repainted everything and changed about half the curtains. And, they did a major job on it. And one devotee got the very brilliant idea. He had just learned the Sanskrit alphabet. He got this brilliant idea. I will write the Hare Krishna Mahamantra in Sanskrit on the front steps of the temple, leading into the temple building and the temple room. I will write the whole Hare Krishna mantra. And Prabhupada will be pleased. Sanskrit, very good. So he did. So anyway, they finished. As the car was driving down the road and just about to stop, they finished. So they took all these paint pots and brushes and sticks and the old curtains and you name it, whatever else, and just dumped them by the back door, right around the back door of the temple. Prabhupada gets out of the car, kirtan. He's walking in, just about to step on the front steps, and he says, Hare Krishna Mahamantra. I cannot step on the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So he went to the back door. And there's all this junk, just everywhere. And somehow they had to push it aside and get him through. Yes. So Prabhupada said nothing. He just rolled his eyes and looked at the temple president. Yeah. And one thing, one devotee, Badri Narayan Maharaj, he was temple president in San Diego. He may have been involved in this field last time we read about it. But he was the temple president, and Prabhupada was coming in a week or just shortly, and he wanted to go on a morning walk with Prabhupada and get some instructions. What are the duties of a temple president? How to be a temple president. Okay, so one day, Prabhupada comes, and then Prabhupada goes on a morning walk one of the days. And Badri Narayan Maharaj went also. And Prabhupada's walking, And then at one point Prabhupada stopped and said something, and he's about to carry on, and Bhadrendra Maharaj thought, it's my chance. I will ask him my question. How to be temple president? What are the duties? So he said, Srila Prabhupada, could you please tell us what are the duties of a temple president? Srila Prabhupada said, temple president means whenever anything goes wrong, it's his fault. Hare Krishna. Yes. So, want to be temple president? All right. Prabhupada was expert at using things, utilizing things. You know, he would, in those days, there was no email or electronic communication, just didn't exist. So devotees would write letters, and he would dictate letters which would be typed out in reply. So, yes. So what happened? Oh yeah, okay. And you know what? He would get letters. He would keep the old envelopes, used, with the stamps, with the address, and torn open. He would keep them, and he would write notes. He would use them for like note paper. Oh, yeah. It was very, what would you say? Anyway, he really didn't want to waste anything. So one day, someone brought some leaflets, like A5 size. Yeah, half a magazine page size, advertising a Mayavadi preaching program, and left them there and asked the devotees, can you distribute them to the people who come to the temple? And of course they didn't really want to do that, because this is Mayavadi, and he's preaching some nonsense, that it's all one, we're all God. Would you make a good God? If you were God, how do you think things would be? I can tell you, if I was God, it'd be a mess. I would make a terrible God. So there's this, small pile of like maybe 50 leaflets. Then Prabhupada does a program. Many guests come. And at the end of the program, Prabhupada distributed fruit, prasadam, cut up apples, cut up oranges, like that. So he asked, where are those leaflets? And Prabhupada distributed the fruit on the leaflets, so sort of messed up the leaflets. And he used everything. He was very scrupulous about how he used things. So devotees, I think we've come to the end here. Let me just tell you one, which I know many of you will have heard, but it's just such a nice story. Prabhupada's giving class somewhere, And he's speaking very strongly. If you want to go back to Godhead, you must be 100% pure. And the devotees are like, me, us, 100% pure. And it's not possible. And Prabhupada noticed the lack of optimism. And Prabhupada said, at least 90% pure. And they're still like, don't know about that. At least 80%. And he brought it down a couple more times even. And in the end, Srila Prabhupada said, all right, just hold on to my dhoti. I will take you back to Godhead. Prabhupada said, I have the key for the back door. So when Krishna's having a rasa dance, we'll come in through the back door and Krishna's not looking. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai! Srila Prabhupada ki Jai!